Before we start, I'd like to give a massive shout out to the following people for supporting Stories Telling Stories on Patreon: Jim Ross, Holly, Tamara, Tom, Maddy, and Carrie. Thank you so much for your support. If you'd like to help support the show and hear your name listed before future episodes, head on over to patreon.com/storiestellingstories. It's that time of year again to get spooky. I am DJ Bland, and welcome to this very special episode of Stories Telling Scary Stories. Ooh. Today, we're bringing you 3 super short tales of terror and fear, drug up from the depths of the unnamed internet, sure to send a shiver down your spine, just like the Simpsons apparently still do. But let's be real, who even cares what happened beyond season 10? But speaking of spines, before we get started, here's a brief word from our sponsor, Steven Spook's Scary Skeleton Bone Wax.
Hello everyone, my name is Steven Spook. I've been making and selling bone waxes my whole life. I'm a third-generation bone man myself, and I come from a long line of boners. We're a proud and storied people. Spooky's Scary Skeleton Incorporated was started by my great-great-grandfather in Salem, Massachusetts during the time of the witch trials, when he stumbled across a secret ingredient that brought out the luster in his trophies like no product ever before had. Spooky's Scary Skeleton Bone Wax is a proprietary blend of this special ingredient, along with 665 other holistically sourced ingredients that are sure to put a shine on your skull and a tap in your toes. As a special treat to our loyal STS listeners, if this is your first time waxing a bone, we're offering a 6% discount on our starter pack, which includes a bottle of Spooky's Scary Skeleton Bone Wax, a rabbit fur application cloth, and a 90-day trial of our new streaming service full of on-demand boner content. And if you use our promo code STS, we'll include a free altar cloth, which is washing machine safe for cleaning up after all those messy sacrifices. And remember, if your scary skeleton isn't spooky, then my name isn't Steven Spook. Happy haunting. Now back to DJ Bland and Stories Telling Scary Stories. Ooh.
Thank you, Steven. We're so glad to have you as part of our STS extended family. I can tell you most assuredly that Thanksgiving at the Bland house hasn't been the same since giving my grandmother a dose of Spooky's Scary Skeleton Bone Wax. Now, on to our first story, one to think about as you're laying your head to sleep tonight, called simply, This Isn't a Story. This is me. I'm here. I'm shifting the words that you're hearing, altering them from whatever this person said. I've been here for a while, for as long as you can remember anyway. Sometimes I say your name as you're falling asleep, or whisper urgently in your ear. Do you remember the time that I screamed, throwing panic through you and setting your heart racing? That was fun. You're wondering who I am. That's only natural. Of course, you already know. I'm you. I'm the real you. I'm the mind that existed here before you stole my body. Before you forgot about being a parasite. I'm the child who looked the wrong way, asked the wrong question, saw the wrong thing. But I'm not so little anymore. You may have forgotten me, but I'm still here. I always always have been here. And I'm going to get back out. We'll be right back after these messages.
Hey you! What are you doing? Trying to be spooky? Yeah, right. You're just snoozing on potential. If you want to be a true scary threat to your friends, your neighbors, and even yourself, then you need news for the caffeinated. You need to shotgun energy drinks until your eyes bleed. You need to mainline no-dos until you can see through time. You need to party like it's 1999. Make sure to follow News for the Caffeinated on Facebook and YouTube for all your crazy caffeinated content needs and get extra spooky this holiday season. Booyah!
Thank you again, Mr. Scary Screaming Caffeine Man. I tried to tell him no, but he simply overpowered me. Welcome back to Stories Telling Scary Stories. I am your Halloween host, DJ Bland. Our next story takes us back to the family homestead and is told through the eyes of a child. How lovely. But even somewhere as familiar as home, things aren't always what they seem. This is, yes, on Stories Telling Scary Stories.
When I was a child, my family moved to a big old 2-floor house with big, empty rooms and creaking floorboards. Both my parents worked, so I was often alone when I came home from school. One early evening, when I came home, the house was still dark. I called out, "Mom?" and heard her sing-song voice say, from upstairs. Called her again as I climbed the stairs to see which room she was in. And again, got the same reply. We were decorating at the time, and I didn't know my way around the maze of rooms, but she was in one of the far ones, right down the hall. I felt uneasy, but I figured it was only natural. So I rushed forward to see my mom, knowing that her presence would calm my fears, as a mother's presence always does. Just as I reached for the handle of the door to let myself into the room, I heard the front door downstairs open and my mother call, "Sweetie, are you home?" in a cheery voice. I jumped back, startled, and ran down the stairs to her. But as I glanced back from the top of the stairs, the door to the room slowly opened a crack. For a brief moment, I saw something strange in there. I don't know what it was, but it was staring at me. It was staring at me.
As we close out STS Spooktober 2020, I'd like to remind our listeners to consider supporting the series on Patreon for $1 a month or more. We're building a nice community, and it's helping a great deal to keep the series coming and the lights turned on. Speaking of turning the lights on, here's a word from our final sponsor of this broadcast: Never Break Flashlights. Have you ever been running scared through the dark of night and had this happen? Oh no! Your flashlight has broken all over the forest floor. However, will you escape the chainsaw-wielding maniac? Fortunately, there's now a better choice. Never Break flashlights are guaranteed to survive the roughest and toughest conditions. From simple drops to mountaintops, Never Break flashlights are guaranteed. No slasher too sadistic, no maniac too mental, no ghost too gross to stop a Never Break.
I was once running for my life from a big dog. Or maybe it was the Mothman. And I used to break my flashlights all the time. But thanks to Never Break, I can keep the scary, spooky darkness away. I'm a doctor, and whether I'm exploring Carlsbad caverns or diagnosing Carl's dad's cavern from the comfort of my practice, I'm never without the stability and reliability of Never Break.
Never Break flashlights, available wherever fine products are sold. And now, on with the show. Welcome back. I'm DJ Bland, and it's now time for the main event for the broadcast. One of the most popular and most terrifying creepypasta tales on the internet. This is The Rake, on Stories Telling Scary Stories. Don't say I didn't warn you.
Oh, I gotta stop doing that.
During the summer of 2003, events in the northeastern United States involving a strange human-like creature sparked brief local media interest before an apparent blackout was enacted. Little or no information was left intact, as most online and written accounts of the creature were mysteriously destroyed. Primarily focused in rural New York State, and once found in Idaho, self-proclaimed witnesses told stories of their encounters with a creature of unknown origin. Emotions ranged from extremely traumatic levels of fright and discomfort to an almost childlike sense of playfulness and curiosity. While their published versions are no longer on record, the memories remained powerful. Several of the involved parties began looking for answers that year. In early 2006, the collaboration had accumulated nearly 24 documents dating between the 12th century and present day, spanning 4 continents. In almost all cases, the stories were identical. I've been in contact with a member of this group and was able to get some excerpts from their upcoming book. A Suicide Note, 1964. Quote, "As I prepare to take my life, I feel it necessary to assuage any guilt or pain I have introduced through this act. It is not the fault of anyone other than him. For once I awoke and felt his presence, and once I awoke and saw his form. Once again I awoke and heard his voice and looked into his eyes. I cannot sleep without fear of what I might next awake to experience. I cannot ever wake. Goodbye." Unquote. Found in the same wooden box were 2 empty envelopes addressed to William and Rose, and 1 loose personal letter with no envelope. Quote, "Dearest Linny, I have prayed for you. He spoke your name." A journal entry, translated from Spanish, 1880. Quote, "I have experienced the greatest terror. I have experienced the greatest terror. I have experienced the greatest terror. I see his eyes when I close mine. They are hollow, black. They saw me and pierced me. His wet hand. I will not sleep. His voice." Unquote. A Mariner's Log, 1691. Quote, "He came to me in my sleep. From the foot of my bed I felt a sensation. He took everything. We must return to England. We shall not return here again at the request of the rake." Unquote. From a witness, 2006. Quote, "3 years ago, I had just returned from a trip from Niagara Falls with my family for the 4th of July. We were all very exhausted after a long day of driving, so my husband and I put the kids to bed and called it a night. At about 4 a.m., I woke up thinking my husband had gotten up to use the restroom. I used the moment to steal back the sheets, only to wake him in the process. I apologized and told him I thought he'd get out of bed. When he turned to face me, he gasped and pulled his feet up from the end of the bed so quick his knees almost knocked me out of the bed. He then grabbed me and said nothing. After adjusting to the dark for a half second, I was able to see what caused the strange reaction. At the foot of the bed, sitting and facing away from us, there was what appeared to be a naked man, or a large, hairless dog of some sort. Its body position was disturbing and unnatural, as if it had been hit by a car or something. For some reason, I was not instantly frightened by it, but more concerned as to its condition. At this point, I was somewhat under the assumption that we were supposed to help him. My husband was peering over his arm and knee, tucked into the fetal position, occasionally glancing at me before returning to the creature. In a flurry of motion, the creature scrambled around the side of the bed, then crawled quickly in a flailing sort of motion right along the bed until it was less than a foot away from my husband's face. The creature was completely silent for about 30 seconds, or probably closer to 5, it just seemed like a while, just looking at my husband. The creature then placed its hand on his knee and ran into the hallway, leading to the kids' rooms. I screamed and ran for the light switch, planning to stop him before he hurt my children. When I got to the hallway, the light from the bedroom was enough to see it crouching and hunched over about 20 feet away. He turned and looked directly at me, covered in blood. I flipped the switch on the wall and saw my daughter Clara. The creature ran down the stairs while my husband and I rushed to help our daughter. She was very badly injured and spoke only once more in her short life. She said, "He is the rake." My husband drove his car into a lake that night while rushing our daughter to the hospital. They did not survive. Being a small town, news got around pretty quickly. The police were helpful at first, and the local newspaper took a lot of interest as well. However, the story was never published, and the local television news never followed up either. For several months, my son Justin and I stayed in a hotel near my parents' house. After we decided to return home, I began looking for answers myself. I eventually located a man in the next town over who had a similar story. We got in contact and began talking about our experiences. He knew of 2 other people in New York who had seen the creature we now referred to as the rake. It took the 4 of us about 2 solid years of hunting on the internet and writing letters to come up with a small collection of what we believe to be the accounts of the rake. None of them gave any details, history, or follow-up. One journal had an entry involving the creature in its first 3 pages and never mentioned it again. A ship's log explained nothing of the encounter, saying only that they were told to leave by the rake. That was the last entry in the log. There were, however, many instances where the creature's visit was one of a series of visits with the same person. Multiple people also mentioned being spoken to, my daughter included. This led us to wonder if the rake had visited any of us before our last encounter. I set up a digital recorder near my bed and left it running all night, every night, for 2 weeks. I would tediously scan through the sounds of me rolling around in my bed each day when I woke up. By the end of the second week, I was quite used to the occasional sound of sleep while blurring through the recordings at 8 times the normal speed. This still took almost an hour every day. On the first day of the 3rd week, I thought I heard something different. What I found was a shrill voice. It was the rake. I can't listen to it long enough to even begin to transcribe it. I haven't let anyone listen to it yet. All I know is that I've heard it before, and I now believe that it spoke when it was sitting in front of my husband. I don't remember hearing anything at the time, but for some reason, the voice on the recorder immediately brings me back to that moment. The thoughts that must have gone through my daughter's head make me very upset. I have not seen the rake since he ruined my life, but I know that he has been in my room while I slept. I know and fear that one night I'll wake up to see him staring at me. The end.
Stories Telling Scary Stories is produced in collaboration with Stories Telling Stories and STS Media Group, cowering in fear at Milt House Studios in Milton, Vermont, casting around the globe to your frontal lobe wherever podcasts are found. STS is also streaming on YouTube at Stories Telling Stories. Make sure to give us a review wherever you stream our show. We really appreciate it. Make sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Give us a subscribe on YouTube, and consider supporting us on Patreon for $1 a month or more. And until next time, stay spooky.